And that means it's bug season. Heck, who am I kidding? It's always bug season in Texas. And that's why you need Grandeur Pest Solutions in your corner. They're locally owned and operated. They're trained, they're trustworthy, and they have a proven record as they have been in business for almost 10 years. They provide pest control against ants, bed bugs, bees, roaches, fleas, wasps, mosquitoes, rodents, spiders. If it crawls and you don't like it, they're probably going to take care of it for you. Now, they serve all of the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and they're locally owned. These two guys have been running this business since 2013, and every year they get bigger and bigger. But you know what they still do? They still have great customer service. In fact, if you get a hold of them, they're usually going to have your quote and your job ready to go within 48 hours. That's pretty good. Now, you can call them for a free estimate at 469-809-1769. You can find them online at Grandeur4, that's the number 4, shore.com. You can also find them on Facebook. Just type in Grandeur Pet Solutions, and we are so happy that they're title sponsor for OutDrank The Coverage in 2023.
That hawk and spit on that thing. You get me?
Here we go.
It's time for the old time happy hour.
Oh, yes.
Pick up your step.
Back a time in life when things are simpler, maybe better
Sing along
for certain people. I don't know why I've always feel compelled when we start this show. I gotta say something just to remind you, Noe, the three-fist rule.
You can't take the kid out of the town, I guess.
Can't
take the town out of the kid, maybe.
Maybe
Yeah,
you can't take the KKK out of the kid.
Yeah.
That is intern Noe the Pro. I am Terry, the host. This is OutDrank The Coverage. Welcome all you drinkers, as we're going to be talking a little NFL football on this happy hour. In fact, we're going to be talking AFC previews. If you've never joined our preview show, first off, this is the first time we've done this live. So this is going to be cool. And if you listened to us last year, and, I know a lot of people don't listen all through the off season. By the way, we've already got like 2,200 people listening. Thank y'all. It still blows my mind every time when I hit the live on this. I'm expecting, okay, we'll have 20 people, by the time we kick the music up and everything, to already have 2,000. Just, it warms the cockles of my heart. But we've never done these live. And so if you listen last year when we did the Monday happy hour, or we just called it OutDrank The Coverage, we're still going to do that, but we're going to do them live this year. And we'll start about 6 p.m. And we'll just kind of each week go as, do the normal review and preview of the NFL week, and then kind of maybe watch a little bit of the Monday Night Football. And if it's a really good game, we might stay on through most of it. And if not, we'll just end the show. But we do have a programming note that you will be in studio for week 1 of the happy hour, as you're going to come in and we're going to watch the whole game and all that kind of fun stuff. But before we get into the meat of the show, intern Noe, how do you do and what do you drink? 'Cause you got something pretty special today.
I do. Unfortunately, I didn't bring out the cube, but today I am drinking. Oh, I'm doing fine.
Oh, that's good.
I'm drinking Larceny 1870. So wheated bourbon, 46% alcohol, 92 proof. It's a classic one, especially with the rising costs now. I got to find a more of a lower budget whiskey, just to be a responsible, fiscally spending adult. This runs about $20-25, and it's still one of my favorite cheaper whiskeys. So I like it. How about you, Ben? How are you doing, and what are you drinking?
I do well. I am about 4 days away from going to the beach for my yearly take 1 week right before the season starts to take a break. I'm always drinking like I always do. I'm drinking Goodnight Loving. It's good, clean vodka. Speaking of going to the beach, I'll be going to Corpus. I want to give a shout out to a friend of the show, Sunset House Motel down in Port Mansfield. If you don't know where Port Mansfield is, it's down there south of South Padre. They have a cool hunting, fishing lodge. You not only get to go there and stay, but they charter fishing. You can stay there and fish from there. Grant sideline to sideline co-host. He also goes to Corpus every year, and they like to charter a boat out there and stuff. And you can do that if you just go about 2 more hours south, go down to Sunset House Motel. Check them out, sunsethousemotel.com. Also find them on Facebook. Just type in Sunset House. Just want to give them a shout out. But speaking of intern Noe the Grant, that's a cool new name. Speaking of Grant, poor dude, they go down to Corpus last weekend and they get COVID.
Oh, wow.
So they ended up just kind of having to stay inside. It feels like, and no political, if there's anybody in the chat, I don't want to talk vaccines and all that, but it does seem like COVID's kind of rearing its head again all of a sudden.
Yeah, it really is. And it's really starting to ramp up right now during the summertime. But a couple of coworkers that have gotten it too. And you kind of tell when they're mysteriously are not showing up at work, even though they don't have vacation.
Yeah.
So you just wonder, yeah. So yeah, hey, I'm not saying like work from home for everybody, but just be careful, do what you can.
Well, and the good thing is with 4 years in now, the care's a lot better, so the deaths are way low, and that's why it's not making as big of a news as it would have been. But I'm because of what we do, and also just me being a news person, I get 100 articles a day on different stuff, and I've just kept noticing that it's kind of upticked. We're gonna do something new on the show. You and I again. Huh?
I apologize. The special thing you were talking about was the bottle of larceny that I got.
Oh yeah, we forgot to finish that.
It came with an ice mold, a really nice ice mold.
That is awesome.
So I went and washed it and filled it up and put it in the freezer. So maybe whenever I am ready, I'll make a drink and I'll send you a picture, or I'll post it on socials. There
is an ice mold that I want to get on Amazon that makes little state of Texas ice. Oh, okay. I want to get that. I love ice mold. I don't know why. I'm an ice guy, and so I just like that. But anyway, so we're going to do something new because, again, I feel like this is the beginning of our season. Our in-season, off-season shows have ended. Check all of them out. Man, outstanding numbers. I have one more to post. That's the number one rival of the Dallas Cowboys. That will be, of course, the Philadelphia Eagles. That will go up Thursday, maybe Friday, but it'll go up. And this is kind of the kickoff to the season. So we kind of want to remind people that might be new that you and I basically started this show because, well, A, I do this for a living, and B, when you and I hang out, we're like that old meme where some woman was like, guys just sit around and somebody yells a player's name and you just talk about them for an hour. And that's kind of what you and I do. And we realized that we were kind of missing kind of one of that thing, and that's just to name a random player that maybe people have forgotten about, or shockingly for this one that you didn't even know. And since we're doing an AFC now, it's going to be kind of funny because you're going to see him as a Seahawk and go, wait a minute. But if you're old enough to remember, the Seattle Seahawks actually started in 1975 in the AFC, and were in the AFC for what, till 2004, 2002,
2002. That was when the Texans came into the league and they had to do the whole realignment.
Exactly. And that man is one of my favorite players as a kid. That is defensive end Jacob Green. Now, Noah, I love pass rushes. I love linebackers. I love defensive ends. I've always loved the defensive side of the ball. I just thought it's just fun to watch. And he's a guy that, as I explained to you, he's kind of like, if you're a Cowboy fan, he's Tony Tolbert. A little bit more sacks, a lot more sacks, but that's kind of where he was. He kind of was an unsung hero, especially because, he was on a Seattle team from 1980 to 1991. He did play 1 year with, I think it was San Francisco. Did he play with San Francisco?
Yeah, 92.
That's right, 92, because I actually remember that now. He didn't really get a lot of snaps or anything. But with Seattle, he was just a really consistent guy. But he was also on a team that at times struggled a lot. And so he kind of got lost in that. He was an all-pro 1 year. He was Defensive Rookie of the Year. He made a couple Pro Bowls. And he was just a dude that I just always enjoyed watching. For some reason, whenever I happened to watch a Seattle game, he always seemed to have a good game. And he also is from Texas. He's from Pasadena. He played at A&M. And so to Mr. Green, intern Noe and I salute you and hope you're having a good day. And we're going to kind of do that through the NFL and maybe try to make it themed like somebody the Cowboys are playing, maybe bring up one of their players and all that. But anyway, here's what we're going to do tonight. We're going to talk AFC. Nothing but AFC. Okay, we might talk other things because me and Noe tend to ramble. We have a circuitous path to where we get to. But what we're going to do is we're going to do what we've always done. We're going to pick who we think is going to make the playoffs. We're going to tell you why the teams will make the playoffs and why the teams that won't. And we'll just have a good old time doing that. So before we start, I want to ask you, just top of your head, looking right now, and again, we're recording this because this will stay up as our preview show. We're recording this on August 12th. So anything that happens between now and the start of the season, injuries, stuff we can't predict, of course. But when you look at the AFC right now, what is the first thing you think of?
Oh, Chiefs, can they three-peat?
Yeah.
And that should be the thing that dominates this season, because out of all the teams that went back-to-back, this is the one team I feel, outside of the 90 49ers, has the best shot at actually doing it.
Well, I mean, the 94 Cowboys.
I mean, the 49ers basically opened up the checkbook and paid a lot of one-year rentals. I already knew it was going to be pretty tough to win it that year. That was definitely the best Cowboy team of the 90s. Even though they didn't win the Super Bowl. But, yeah, I knew San Francisco was going to be a problem in 94.
I agree with you that this is weird to say this. For me, it's can the Chiefs three-peat and become the first team to do that? But also, if everybody stays healthy, the AFC is so deep, and you'll see it reflected in my picks. The AFC is so deep. You're going to have a lot of good teams with not great looking records because you're just not going to, I don't see many teams running through the AFC and winning more. And again, so what we'll do is we'll kind of just start with the AFC East and we'll work our way down. We'll give our playoff picks and then we'll put up our playoff picks, like who we think will win the rounds and all that. But yeah, so that's my thing. I think even though Kansas City, I think is probably, I agree with you in totality. I think, you look at that Niner team that lost because Roger Craig fumbles, which maybe it's kept him out of the Hall of Fame. I don't really think it is, but some people claim that they think that might have kept him out of the Hall of Fame. But that's if he doesn't fumble, I think that they beat the Bills and they win their three-peat. I do think that this is the most complete team since then that doesn't have, at least on paper, someone that's an obvious, they can beat them. Now, we'll see how our picks work, but we'll go ahead and start in the AFC East. We'll go ahead and start with the Buffalo Bills, who, they're a team that last year went 11-6. Once again, we're, a team that at times looked like the best team in the league, and they started really slow, and then they got really hot. But at the end of the day, it just feels like Buffalo is letting a window close on them. And I think this is the year of you've either got to at least get to a Super Bowl or there's wholesale changes, and not Josh Allen. Josh Allen is young enough. You could mini rebuild. You don't even have to really truly rebuild, but you could mini rebuild and still be good. But if they don't at least get to the Super Bowl, I think we have a new coach. I think we have a lot of new players.
Yeah, I really do too. They got rid of Stephon Diggs. They fired Ken Dorsey last season, their offensive coordinator, and they had Joe Brady be the interim. Now he's the official OC. They went with more of a run game, which kind of worked because their offensive line was pretty healthy.
Yeah,
and they let James Cook. James Cook became one of the best running backs in football. So as long as having said all that, as long as you have Josh Allen, you still have a shot. What killed them last season, they had the 2 seed, but the problem with them is just the injuries. They just kept piling up. And it wasn't just like backups or fringe starters. It was Tre'Davious White. It was Jordan Poyer. It was like very important players on their defense. And they still hung with the Chiefs in the divisional round last year, but I think it was just too much to overcome. So having said that, they kind of, they drafted Keon Coleman. They also got rid of Gabe Davis. So, they got rid of Diggs and Davis. They added Coleman. I feel they're going to still lean more into the running part of their offense and then just really start utilizing both tight ends, Dawson Knox and Dalton Kincaid. I can see Kincaid having a 1,000-yard receiving season. But yeah, and Khalil Shakir, their WR1 now. I think he might be a 1,000-yard receiver as well. So.
I think that what's going to end up killing them is the wide receiver position. You know, they didn't, you know, they get rid of Stephon Diggs. I totally get it. There's just, he's a guy that you can't only win. He has to be the focal point of the passing game and win. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not judging him, but it's obvious that can become an issue. It was an issue in Minnesota. It became an issue in Buffalo, at least enough to where they were like, we're washing our hands of him. And then it just felt like they just sat on the wide receiver position. Like, you really thought that they were going to be bigger players in the wide receiver, you know, whether it be through trade or through drafting, and they bring in Curtis Samuel and Mac Hollins. And it's just like, okay. And I like your idea of, hey, let's lean on the tight ends. But the problem is, I mean, you still got to have somebody on the outside that's you can hit over the top that forces those safeties to not be in the tight end passing lanes and to not be up into the running lane. And I think this offense takes a huge step back this year.
I think scheme-wise, I could see that. From my guessing, based off what happened from the time they lost to today, which is August 12th, I feel that they are very confident in Khalil Shakir and their draft pick, Keon Coleman, to be difference makers on the outside. That's just from what they've done.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. But again, wide receiver, and it's getting better, but wide receiver is still a position where rookies tend to have a big adjustment.
Yeah. So for every, they have your outliers like your, Justin Jefferson, and Chase in Cincinnati. But for the most part, even DK Metcalf, it took him almost a full year to finally become the big freak athlete that he is today.
Well, and with Chase, you still had a good Tyler Boyd.
Yeah.
And when you look at like CeeDee Lamb for the Cowboys, he had a really solid rookie year, and that was in that 2020, all that. But he also had other people. When you ask a rookie wide receiver to become wide receiver number one, and don't tell me that Mac Hollins will be wide receiver number one. Now, I do like Curtis Samuel. I think Curtis Samuel has been, just tragically underused. But again, he's not a guy that goes out and takes the top off of an offense or defense for you.
They have good 3s and 4s.
Yes.
They have MBS, Mac Hollins, Curtis Samuel. Those are good 3s and 4s for this year. They have Chase Claypool, but I'm not even considering him at this point.
Do you think they look at maybe a Juju who, Schuster Smith, who just got released by New England? Do you maybe give him a look?
Or Hunter Renfrow?
I don't know. Something is up with Hunter Renfrow. I don't know if it's one of those things where, he's a quick guy, and you know how that works. Quick guys lose their step even quicker than fast guys, because if you can't, and maybe he's lost that step because you can't tell me there's not a team in the league that's not looked at him and been like, we could use him. I mean, we joke, but Dallas, Dallas, I would love to have, especially if Lamb, and I still think Lamb's going to come in and he's going to play, but even if, wouldn't mind having that slot guy. So there must be something about Renfrow that's scaring people off. But yeah, somebody like that, I don't feel that wide receiver room in Buffalo is set. All right, let's go to Miami now. Last year, they were also 11-6. You and I were kind of joking. We used to say the Chargers were the Cowboys of the AFC. Last year it was more Miami, where, man, they started hot and it felt like, holy crap. And then they were still fine the rest of the year, but it just felt like they started to fizzle towards the end of the year. And some of that was injuries, but still, I'm worried that sometimes this offense might be all flash, but can't win a game in Buffalo when it's 40 degrees and you need your offensive lineman to just grind you out 3 and 4 yards a carry.
This was a team, it was just like the Cowboys, like where they could beat the bad teams and they could pad their offensive and defensive stats on bad teams. But when they played any team that was 500 or better, it was a struggle. I couldn't tell why. I don't know if the game plan had to change drastically because they're playing a halfway decent team. But with all that talent they have on offense, they're paying Tyreek Hill and Waddle and Tua a ton of money.
Wow, the deal they gave Hill. And I love Hill. And I do think Hill is like Steve Smith and Deshaun Jackson had a kid. I mean, he's the toughness. He can go across the middle, but he's one of the fastest, most explosive players in the league. But $90 million. I mean, wow. They're putting their money Either they're putting their money long term, or this is a short term. We're giving this 2 years, and if it don't work, we're just going to blow it. And I do think you'll see more teams doing that. If you've noticed all these big quarterback and wide receiver deals, it's not 6 and 7 years; it's 3 to 5 years. That gives you that time. Okay, we'll try it. If it don't work, we can tear it down and we can restart it. I just don't trust the Dolphins right now.
I don't trust them either. They are in a short window. It's just like with Buffalo; they're in a win now mode. They're giving Tyreek Hill, someone that's over 30, on the wrong side of 30, a lot of money. He already said he's going to retire in a couple of years. So, and they already had Odell Beckham, who's just hopping from team to team at this point in his career. The offense is going to put up points.
I will say this: if they use Odell correctly and he doesn't get hurt, he could flourish underneath in that offense because they still don't really have a tight end. For some reason, maybe that's just McDaniel. He just doesn't use a tight end.
From what I've heard, it is McDaniel. But he has said he is going to start implementing that, and maybe that's the reason why they got Jonnu Smith. But he's a solid guy.
He's solid. He's solid.
Veteran. And I know why you snickered there, but they need to implement something else on that offense. They have 2 really good running backs, but Raheem Mostert's also on the wrong side of 30. Devin Achane had injury issues last year. You don't know if that's going to be a lingering thing.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Them and Buffalo both had major injury issues last year, and that was kind of the reason for some of their shortcomings.
Now, on paper, though, I like what the Dolphins have done defensively, adding Poyer, adding Kendall Fuller, adding Shaq Barnett. I think whether – and Calais Campbell, and if they use Calais Campbell right, he's good for 8 sacks. But they're very important sacks. You can't put him out for 30 snaps a game. What's that dude? Trace Armstrong.
I was just about to say it.
Armstrong.
2000 with the Dolphins. He had a third of the snaps, but had like 15 sacks.
Exactly. If you use him correctly, I think you can still get Neville Gallimore, who was a former Cowboy who always graded out bad, but I always kind of felt he got kind of unfairly graded because we now realize that Dan Quinn doesn't care about the run. He just wanted to get to the quarterback. I do think they've made some really good additions defensively, and if that side gels, well, then you can protect your offense. Because I think some of the problems with the offense late in the season, or as you say, against good teams, is they felt they had to score 40 or 70 like they did against Denver. But anyway, so that's Miami. And we'll give our pick of this division when we get through with it. We'll now go to the Jets, who last year, of course, had the most memeable start to a football season ever. I mean, dude runs out with the American flag, and 2 snaps later, he's on the ground. Aaron, I don't need no vaccine Rodgers. He's supposedly back. I still want to see what he does on that Achilles, because I know all the hubbub last year about, he was almost ready and all, and it's a new procedure, and that part's not BS. Apparently what he did is a new procedure that's helping people heal better from Achilles tears, but until it works, we all know usually the Achilles tear is almost a death knell for players. You rarely come back anywhere close, even at quarterback. But if he comes back, this team might be the most talented roster in the AFC East, and it might not even be close.
Especially with the upgrades they did to the offensive line to protect Aaron Rodgers. They got old cowboy Tyron Smith. I hope he does well.
No hate for him. Love him.
He's no hate for him. He take that money, get that 1-year deal. They also got John Simpson from the Ravens to shore up the interior offensive line, and they drafted Olu Fashanu. So they're making efforts to protect their quarterback. They're the person that they're building this entire team around. I hope Rodgers stays healthy just to see the entertainment aspect of it. And he has weapons. Garrett Wilson,
If Mike Williams can stay healthy, to me, he is the breakout star of the AFC if he stays healthy. And that's going to be the issue, because Aaron Rodgers consistently will find the one guy through the season that becomes his guy, at least for that season. And I really think it could be Mike Williams.
That's on the defensive side, they have a big issue now with Hassan Reddick.
Yeah, that broke today. I don't know. I don't know what was going on. Honestly, I didn't even know he was holding out until like this weekend and the fines. By the way, NFLPA, y'all really were stupid to agree to. So, okay, the way it used to work, the fines for holding out started, about 10 years ago, I think. And the way it used to work is a guy would hold out, and then when he'd sign the deal, they would just, we ain't going to make you pay. Well, the owners got the NFLPA to agree to that. Now, if you get fined for missing, you have to pay. You cannot get out of it. Now, you can make the case that the owner will bump up his salary, his roster bonus or anything like that. But still, come on, union, y'all got to do better than that. But yeah, he's apparently dug in, he'd be happy just to sit out a year.
Yeah, and that would really suck for the Jets because they got rid of Bryce Huff, who was one of their main pass rushers last season. And then they traded for Reddick to basically replace him. So if Reddick doesn't play at all, they're going to have to really lean on Kinlaw, one of their additions, along with Quentin Williams to really put pressure on the quarterback. So that will be a major setback for that defense because they were the unit that was carrying this team the last couple of seasons. So it could be a situation where it still works out because Rodgers is healthy. If Rodgers is healthy, I think everything will be okay.
As long as they can keep him upright, yes. I just think he's never been a scrambler in the essence of like a Dak but he knows how to move around the pocket. But man, if he's even a step slower now because of that, I don't know. This is not fair to the Jets, but it just feels like they're so snake bit that something will go wrong with them. I don't know. We'll see. But all right, let's finish out the East with New England. I think we now realize New England is fully in a rebuild, which, hey, dude, no shame in that. I'm on a bunch of NFL pages to help promote the show and to get information and stuff. And there's a lot of jokes running about the Pats, and how bad they're going to be. And I'm thinking, I'm good if my team needs to struggle for a few years after the run that they had. And saying that, there's still some pretty good talent there.
Oh, yeah, man. For them, they still have a strong defense. They were injury-prone last year. Their draft pick, Christian Gonzalez, got hurt last year. He was having a great rookie year. Judon finally got hurt, and now we're hearing that he's wanting to be traded. But, yeah, Kyle Duggar, Jabril Peppers, who I really love. They have some good talent on that defense. The problem is going to be their offensive line, and there's the lack of playmakers on offense. They kind of addressed that in the draft by, getting Jalen Polk from Washington and getting not Mac Jones. They got rid of Mac Jones. They got Drake May from UNC. So they did stuff there. And then I liked the addition of Antonio Gibson from Washington. I think he's a really good pass catching running back and a situational starter. And then KJ Osborne. Yep. Those are just good depth hires. And Brissett, a good number 2 quarterback who might start this season. We'll see what happens. But, yeah, a big problem for them.
Oh, there we go. Hit the wrong button there.
Finish off by saying the biggest problem there is Joe Milton looks better right now than Drake May.
I saw that. I saw the game, or I saw the highlights, I should say. Yeah, he did. But, man, and I know Drake May was playing 1s or 2s and 3s, but man, how many times do we see this in preseason, especially the first game? Some quarterback that's a late pick or a UFA, they'll shock everybody. And then all of a sudden, all the insiders, and it's exactly what started happening this week, all the insiders saying, well, actually, he'd been looking like that all camp, and he might be the number 2. And then, when he gets closer and you start actually playing some of the 1s and 2s, you see him struggle. I think everybody needs to tap the brakes on that.
I hope they let May sit because I don't like this offensive line for the Patriots, and I'd rather have a veteran out there taking the hits instead of your number 3 overall pick.
Yeah, but you and I have talked about, I don't disagree with you, but you and I have talked about it in the era now where you need to use every year of that rookie deal. If you sit him, you eat a year. Even if you're rebuilt. So that's the thing, folks. Nobody's going to rebuild again if they're rebuilding correctly. Nobody is rebuilding past 5 years anymore. If you have to rebuild that past that 5th year, the only reason the Giants, the ball's still staying is because they cut the other dude 1 year after. And so they're kind of stuck to where we don't want to become a coach farm where every 2 years. But if you can't get it done in 5 years, you're out. So I don't know. I don't know if you can afford to sit him that much. And if he's not good enough to start at least by halfway through the first season, then it's almost like, is that going to be a bad draft pick? Fair or not? But anyway, all right, who do you have making the play? Because you and I, all jokes aside, we were joking about this earlier. I have never seen us have such a vast difference of who we think are winning and making the play. Usually we're around the same. 7 teams will get in, and we might have a difference in a playoff game, but you and I are completely different because you have a lot more trust in the AFC East than I do.
I do, because injury issues are usually not year to year to year.
Good point.
So that's why I'm thinking the AFC East was ravaged by injuries last season, and that's, to me, the main reason why a lot of those teams didn't perform as well as they should have. So that's why for my picks for this, I have 3 teams coming out of the AFC East to make the playoffs.
All right.
I have Miami winning the conference, having the best record in the AFC with a 12-5 record. And then I have Buffalo and the New York Jets also making the playoffs at 10-7 respectively.
All right. And you're going to, one thing you're going to notice between you and I, and again, this was kind of when I began to show how deep this conference is. For me, that means there's a lot of teams that'll beat each other. I have only one team from the East making it. I have Buffalo at 9-8 making it. I have them winning the division as the lowest division seed. I have Miami missing it at 9-8. I have the Jets with a 7-10, and then I have the Patriots 3-14.
All right. So is Aaron Rodgers going to be healthy this season?
Yeah.
And they're going to be 7-10.
Yeah.
Oh, I kind of want you to be right, because that would be awesome drama for the entire season if they're still struggling.
I mean, it's 7. I don't necessarily. It's weird to say. I mean, it's 7-10. I don't know if it's going to be struggling. I just don't think they're going to be consistent. And I also, again, I just think being in the AFC, look, Aaron, we still don't know what Aaron Rodgers has left. You know, we haven't seen him now for over a calendar year. He was perfectly fine his last year in Green Bay, but we don't know if he's lost the step or not step, but you know what I mean? If he's still got it. I still think there's going to be some offensive inconsistencies. Okay, if Tyron Smith is even normal, how many games is he going to play? Things like that. And I don't know. I still don't trust him. Again, maybe it's not fair, but I still don't trust the Jets until I see it. I just don't trust that the Jets still know how to completely build a roster. All right, where do you want to go next?
Let's go to the AFC North.
So this is where you and I differ. I like the North this year. I said this when we talked Pittsburgh the other day. I think Pittsburgh is going to finally have their winning season, or at least 500 and above stretch snapped. But I don't think it's because they're a bad team. I think it's just going to be really, really hard in an AFC North with Baltimore, Cleveland, and Cincinnati in there. And we'll start with Baltimore last year, 13-4. Of course, once again, disappointing, though they did make the next step in their playoff run. They, of course, probably one of the biggest additions in the NFL offseason, adding Derrick Henry. And I don't know why. I just feel that we've got at least 1, maybe 2 more years of King Henry at his best, because one thing Baltimore knows how to do, mainly because they can't seem to keep a running back healthy, and maybe that becomes an issue, they know how to use their running backs without wearing them down. And I think Derrick Henry is going to flourish here.
I think he'll flourish a lot, and I think Justice Hill and Keaton Mitchell are going to get some carries too. Just to give him a break, because Derrick Henry's going to turn 30 pretty soon here. So yeah, he has, like you said, 1 or 2 good years. They will run the ball, and I think he's going to do really well, at least this year. And I'm really excited because they have actually wide receivers, Zay Flowers, a motivated Rashad Bateman, a Nelson Aguilar who can actually catch. And they got 2 really good tight ends, and Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely. So Lamar Jackson has some weapons in the backfield, outside, big guys at tight end. So I'm really excited to see what this offense can do with another year of Monken.
Well, and also I think they're going to have to score more. Their defense lost some key guys in Patrick Queen and Tyus Bowser. A lot of depth in the secondary. Now they did draft Nate Wiggins, and he's going to be, I think, really, really good. They brought in Chris Board, linebacker, and safety Eddie Jackson. I think are really solid. But I think their offense is going to have to score more this year. Which, I mean, you've got the reigning MVP and all that. They should. I'm still the one knock, though. I'm not as sold on their wide receivers as you are. Still, I don't understand. There's just certain teams, they'll have certain players, and for whatever reason, they just won't go get wide receivers, and it just feels like Baltimore's like that. But I still think, man, I think Derrick Henry might. I legitimately see a 15 touchdown type of season from him, and I think the defense will figure itself out and get some depth. All right, let's go to Cleveland now, who last year, honestly, surprising. It's really weird to say this because they have one of the most talented rosters in the NFL from top to bottom, but they have a quarterback issue. Well, Joe Flacco stepped in last year when Deshaun Watson got hurt, and he played well. But if you really go and look at it, he kind of did, but he kind of was just throwing the shit up and like, hey, if they catch it, they catch it. You still didn't trust him. He's gone. Deshaun Watson now is your guy, 100%. I don't know if that can be a good thing or a bad thing. All jokes aside about the massages and all that, but something has changed in him. He has lost something from when he was so electric and so exciting in Houston.
Well, it's kind of the same situation I had with Cam Newton. Once when he started having shoulder issues, it was kind of it.
Yeah, but Watson got hurt last year. But I mean, even before he got hurt, he just, he did not look good at all. I know he improved a little bit each week, but I mean, he never even looked close to being even a top 15 quarterback, even before the hurt.
Yeah. So in 2020, he had the big breakout year during COVID with Houston. Then he basically sat out in 2021. And then the whole massage situation happened, got suspended for the first 11 games in 2022, came back, was definitely rusty. And then going into 2023, he was still okay. There was a couple of games where he actually did play well. Like you'd see like him starting to get it, and then he got hurt.
Yep.
So
that's true.
I think he just had like a lingering issue. He tried to play through it and it just wasn't working. I hope he took the time to actually get healed, because they invested a lot in him, and they're not getting a return right now in him. They lucked into the playoffs because Flacco was just good enough, and their defense is amazing. So
yeah, but they got a secret weapon on that bench.
So just in case Watson gets hurt.
Not hurt. Jameis Winston, my big prediction is by week 10, Jameis Winston has replaced Deshaun Watson as the starter at the Cleveland Browns.
Oh my God!
I mean, all jokes aside about Watson. I mean, Jameis, I love him as a fantasy guy because he's just fun to watch. I'm just saying, I don't think Watson gets it back for whatever reason. Maybe it was the whole massage thing. Again, it's all jokes to us, but that obviously something has changed with him, and I don't think the Browns have enough time with this roster to let him work through it too long. If he can't do it early, they're going to have to not necessarily move on for a career, but it worked last year with Flacco. Maybe Winston does the same thing because, like you said, you're going to have a great defense. Now, Nick Chubb, that's a question. We're talking now his second major knee injury. Can he come back from that? If he comes back 90%, that's still a 1,200-yard guy. And I think Cleveland's going to be that team that 15 years from now, when we're sitting on the rocking chair, people are going to be like, how did that team not win more? And it's going to come down to they could never find consistent quarterback play.
Yeah, I completely agree with you there. And even though they have the injury issue with Nick Chubb, they still got Jerome Ford, Pierre Strong, and Deontay Foreman just to form a running back by committee that could be okay. They have an elite offensive line. They have David Njoku, who's finally living up to his potential. They traded for Jerry Jeudy, who has a lot of potential, hasn't lived up to it yet. Maybe he can in Cleveland.
Supposedly Brandon Ayuk, they keep going after, even though I know Ayuk supposedly said he doesn't want to go there. Even offering up Amari Cooper, which to me, that's weird. That just feels like subtraction. You're just trading guys. I know they do different things, but I don't know. I mean, to me, if you're going to go after Brandon Ayuk, you want to keep Cooper. But supposedly they're going after that. So we'll see.
We will see, man.
All right, let's go to Pittsburgh. We had a spirited debate a couple of weeks ago. Not really. You and I both feel the exact same way. This is an underrated roster, but if they don't figure out the quarterback, I could see them cratering really bad, like 5-12 type if they don't figure out the quarterback. Because, I mean, everything else they have is solid, but their defense is good, not great. TJ Watt's amazing, but TJ Watt's also, he kind of seems to be banged up every other week and things like that. I like their wide receiver core. I like Van Jefferson. I've always liked Van Jefferson. He got underused in the Rams just because they had such so many wide receivers. But the question's going to be, when you have two quarterbacks, sometimes that means you have no quarterback. Who's going to win the Russell Wilson, Justin Fields, and how good will whoever wins it play when they've got the other guy just breathing down their neck?
I am firmly confident I know who's going to be the starting quarterback to begin the season, but I don't know who's going to end up being the starting quarterback by week 17.
I agree. And Fields didn't really help himself this first, and I know it's preseason, but with quarterback battles, it matters. He had some really good plays, but he had 2 fumbled snaps. And that's the kind of thing. I even sent you a thing about Mike Tomlin talking about quarterbacks. And, he talked about, like, at the end of the day, touchdowns are important, but in today's era, making less mistakes are just as important. You've got to be efficient. I think most coaches nowadays would take a 25 touchdown, 5 interception over a 35 touchdown, 20 interception. And it's just how the game's played. And so that's going to hurt him. Russell Wilson, he's kind of like Deshaun Watson. Something has happened to him. I think we're realizing, and this isn't a knock on him, but I think we're realizing he was really good in Seattle, but he was propped up by a coaching staff that protected him. And I think that he's got to figure out that confidence issue. But they have a solid team. I don't like the quarterback. I don't think their depth is real good.
Yeah, you just assuming that Arthur Smith is going to run in a lot, especially with the upgrades they had to the offensive line, Broderick Jones, who they drafted last year, and then Samalo at guard, Herbert at center. See, their offensive line is not bad.
No,
but their wide receivers, they got rid of Deontay Johnson. He's in Carolina now. George Pickens is their guy. They got Van Jefferson and Calvin Austin as the other receivers. Freiermuth at tight end. Darnell Washington as the second tight end, who they got from the Georgia Bulldogs.
Yeah,
I'm thinking Arthur Smith is going to be really creative with the run game. Cordell Patterson might get a few little touches. You might be picking him up in fantasy like you always do.
Yes, I do, especially with the new kickoff rules. I know he's old, but with new kickoff rules, he's the type of guy you're going to see. And this is why I think Turpin and Dallas might have some issues. I think you're going to see with the new kickoff rules more running back style kickoffs, guys who can break that initial tackle. It's not going to be a one cut and go with your speed, Devin Hester type. It's going to be more the Cordell Patterson big guy that breaks that tackle, because you're basically having a true line of scrimmage again on a kickoff. And I know some people are complaining about it. I think it's going to be fun, but yeah, I definitely will. Let me go ahead and mark that down. Cordell Patterson.
Devin Hester, the first primary return player to be enshrined in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, we'll have a conversation about that one day. Anyway, so now let's go to the team that last year, of course, 9-8 in Cincinnati, but their stud quarterback, Joe Burrows, got hurt. They still, though, stayed competitive, and I think that speaks to, I think people underrate the Bengals because they just think, oh, well, Burrow and Chase, that's what got them into the Super Bowl. The Bengals have quietly over the last 5 years, not just counting Burrows, have drafted pretty damn well. And they built a really solid roster.
Yeah, and what we saw in 21 was a team that was hanging, and then their defense would pick it up in the second half. Their defensive coordinator, Anarumo, he's brilliant strategist. He's a brilliant second half adjuster. And they've always had pretty solid players on the defensive side. And they even got better this year. They lost the Wouzier, but they got Geno Stone from the Ravens. So I really think that's a good signing. And they got Zach Moss running back. He's going to replace who was he replaced?
Joe Mixon.
Yeah, Joe Mixon, who went to the Texans. Who we'll get to them later.
Yep.
So they did lose some players, but I think they got some pretty solid, like Sheldon Rankins. I think he'll have a pretty good bounce back year. Von Bell coming back to the Bengals. So I think they'll do well this year, but with the distraction with T. Higgins, I just don't see them.
You really think that's a distraction?
I really think it is, because I really think Burrow likes him, and he's young. He's really good. And I really think they need to find a way to keep Higgins.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't think I agree with you long term. I don't think it's going to bother him this year. I mean, he's playing, so I mean, it's not like he's going to sit out the year or anything. Anyway,
You just kind of feel like that might be a distraction for the team throughout the season.
I don't know. That's a good discussion. I hadn't even thought about that. All right, so give me your picks. This is where you and I are kind of vastly different on what we think of this. Who makes the playoffs out of this division for you?
Having said what I said about Cincinnati, I actually have them winning the division and being the lone representative from the division that makes the playoffs.
That's the one. Joking about the picks, the thing that blows my mind is you have Baltimore missing the playoffs. Why do you have? Is it just a feel, or do you have a specific reason?
Feel, and I don't think they were very healthy last year. That team typically is not healthy, especially at the quarterback position. I really feel that Henry might get hurt. I feel that either him or Lamar Jackson get hurt. If that happens, that team is not as good as you think they are.
Oh yeah, no, I agree with that. I mean, they have a chance with Lamar to be special, but if he gets hurt and misses extended time or a season ender, I don't think that they have a system, nor do they have a backup that they can really go, okay, we can go win 5 games if we need to. It's very dependent, but I mean, that's when that's what happens when you have a rating MVP quarterback. You just have to live on what they can do. You and I, again, are very different on this because I have this being, in my opinion, on paper, the strongest division in the AFC. I have Baltimore winning it with a 13-4 record. I have making the playoffs Cincinnati at 10-7 and Cleveland at 9-8, and I have Pittsburgh at 8-9. Again, I don't think Pittsburgh's bad. I just think Pittsburgh's going to be that team that just loses in the crappy ways, because that's kind of how they've won the last few years. When they win, they just kind of win 16-15. And I see that kind of coming back to where they start losing those games. But yeah, I have Baltimore, Cincinnati, and Cleveland, all 3 making the playoffs. You only have Cincinnati. We both have I only have 3 teams with 10 wins or more in my picks. Everybody else is at 9-8 that makes the playoffs. And we might even get an 8-9 that makes the playoffs this year. Very well could, especially when we go to this division right here. And that is the AFC South. We'll start with Houston, 10-7. Of course, we know C.J. Stroud did everything great last year. They look to build on that. I think they will. I do think people need to tap the brakes on I've been seeing them as most complete roster in the AFC, Super Bowl favorites. I don't think they're there yet. I think they're almost there. I think their defense last year was good at times, but also at times was not good. I think that the offense got really inconsistent, and a lot of that's just the growth of the quarterback. I like Houston this year, but I do think they just feel like the team that everybody was surprised about last year. Now they're pumping them up. And then this year they take a step back, kind of back towards the means a little bit.
Well, speaking of the defense, they added Danielle Hunter.
Great player.
Yeah, great player. Tim Settle along the defensive line, Mario Edwards. Linebacker, one of the better linebackers in the NFL, Azeez Al-Shaair. They added Jeff Okudah for depth in the safety or in the secondary. CJ Henderson for also for depth. They got Tommy Townsend, the Kansas City Chief punter, and of course Joe Mixon as their new starting running back.
I think that's the underrated player movement that in the AFC. I don't think Joe Mixon's done yet. I think Cincinnati's run blocking wasn't great last year. And then when Burrow got hurt, I mean, you have, even though I can't remember what his name, played decent and they won some games, you still lost Burrow.
Jake Browning.
Yeah. You still lost Burrow. And I think with CJ Stroud and with that wide receiver core, including Diggs and a very underrated offensive line, I think Mixon might have a career year as he's starting to wind down.
Yeah, it's a good 1-2 combo with him and Dameon Pierce. I think Pierce will have a good bounce back. Like you said, offensive line with Tunsil, Juice Scruggs, Shaq Mason, Titus Howard. I really like that offensive line. I am pretty high on them just because of what they did in the offseason. They got a lot of key free agents to either start or for depth. And I think that's going to be a major difference. Now, you heard some issues with Stephon Diggs in Buffalo. I don't know if that's going to carry over into Houston, but that could be a problem with a young quarterback. But I am pretty high on the Texans this year.
I don't think it'll be a problem year one. Usually, problematic receivers the first year it's different. And he's, I think that the thing that he's going to have to be okay though with the ball being spread. That this offense is built on all the targets being targets and not just Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis. You've got Tank Dell. You've got, all jokes aside about him as a Cowboy, Dalton Schultz. I think Dalton Schultz at least showed last year he's at least as good as he is a Cowboy. He's going to get you 70 receptions if you throw him the ball enough. And he's going to have a couple key drops. But, that's the kind of stuff you deal with. It's not even a knock. I'm high on Houston. ESPN does this thing, and we always trade this link every year. They do NFL futures. So every year in the offseason, they kind of rank the next 5 years for a team. And I think Houston for the next 5 years is very high. I just think that everybody's jumping on them. It just feels like this is a year that they'll take a step back. Now, is the step back going to be, enough to cause them to lose the division and lose a playoff spot? I don't know. We'll talk about that now, because now let's move over to, I think, the team that will help decide that. And that's Jacksonville, who last year started off hot, ended up 9-8 because a lot of things. But I still think the biggest thing was, of course, Lawrence being hurt. Trevor Lawrence got hurt. And even though he tried to play through it, the offense just cratered. And it wasn't like the offense was even doing great when they were 7-2, but they were doing enough. What are your thoughts on the Jags?
I like what they did in getting Mac Jones for depth at quarterback, for what you just said, because if Trevor Lawrence gets hurt, at least they have a capable quarterback who's been a starter, who's been on a team that's made the playoffs. So they have a proven really good backup. Losing Calvin Ridley, I'm not sure if it's the biggest loss. They still got Kirk. They signed Gabe Davis from Buffalo. They drafted Brian Thomas Jr. Evan Ingram looks to be consistently a threat at tight end. So talent-wise on the offensive end, I think they're fine. Of course, they have one of the best running backs in football, and Travis Etienne Jr. So I am pretty high on them offensively. Defensively, that might be a different story. I like, of course, Josh Hines-Allen, all-world edge rusher for the Jags. Arik Armstead is a good addition along the line. Outside of that, it's okay. They need pass rush. They're pass rush dependent.
Yeah. So. No, that's a really good point. And I guess everybody in today's NFL is basically pass rush dependent, because, we're in a point where when you rank the toughest or the most important positions, it feels like we're at quarterback, left tackle, edge rusher, wide receiver, and then everybody else. So yeah, I agree with you there. And I think for them, they've got to be able to just be consistent and win. Like, you're in a, that playoff win against Chargers was nice, but it was the Chargers. I mean, come on, it's like beating Dallas in the second round. Everybody does that. I know I had to. I'm out drinking the coverage right now thinking about it. But I think for them though, they've just got to just be able to go out and win those 17-13 games, and get ugly when you need to get ugly. And at times I think that's where they've struggled. All right, let's go to Indianapolis, who last year, again, I feel like we keep saying this, surprisingly had a 9-8 record when their star quarterback, who everybody was, and me too, was getting really excited for, Anthony Richardson, gets hurt and he's out at 2 plays in, basically. I know he tried to play one more and then got hurt. You do have to wonder, is that an issue? Because that's now happened multiple times with him. Like, it happened in preseason. But if he is healthy, I think, Indianapolis, people forget last year they were 1 game out, and that goes back to, as great as Houston was last year, they were 10-7. It wasn't like they were 13-4 or even 12-5. They were 10-7, and they were, 2 clutch wins away from being an 8-9 team. And so you look like a team like Indianapolis, if they can figure out and keep him healthy. I like what they did in the offseason.
Yeah, I like what they did in the offseason. And they didn't really make too many signings, but one of the major ones they got was Joe Flacco. And I think that was a pretty good signing, because they lost excuse me.
Bless you.
Thank you. They lost Gardner Minshew to the Raiders. So they needed another solid backup just in case Anthony Richardson gets hurt again. So, and Flacco proved it with the Browns that he still has something left.
Yeah, but will we get Browns Flacco or Broncos Flacco if he has to play?
Well, you know what? I think it might be Browns Flacco because they also drafted Adonai Mitchell, and I think that's going to be a huge addition for that offense. I think he's one of those rookie receivers that's going to contribute immediately. What are your thoughts on Adonai Mitchell going to the?
Well, I was excited about him, and I talked about him, and going into the draft. I said I think he's probably the most complete wide receiver that's going to end up having the best career. He's got the size, he's got the speed. I think Xavier Worthy is going to be phenomenal with Kansas City, but I think he's going to be more of the over the top type, and I think Mitchell's more of the big body. I saw him make so many just 3rd and 6 catches that wide receivers thrive on if you're going to be a great wide receiver in the NFL. I think for the Colts, by the way, Jonathan Taylor, a lot of talk. He wore the Guardian cap over his helmet. It looks goofy. I'm fine with it. And you brought up why don't they just fix that? I think they will. And I remembered reading that they were already working on how to get the outside look on the inside. But we'll see. I just feel with the Colts, it's going to be all about that defense. And again, can Anthony Richardson stay healthy? I don't trust Joe Flacco if you have to play him 6 or 7 games again.
Yeah. He's almost 40, or he's going to turn 40 this year. But yeah, I wouldn't trust my season on Flacco. He could probably get you a couple wins, but yeah, he's not. No. Anyway, so speaking of the defense, they drafted the UCLA pass rusher Latu.
Yes.
And I remember him being pretty aggressive and pretty disruptive last year for the Bruins.
Yeah, he's a dirty player in the good way. He'll punch. I saw him. I think it was against Fresno. Was it Fresno? I can't remember who it was. Maybe it was Utah. And he'd get under that guy's pad and do the little punch up and in, and you could tell he was doing little titty twisters and shit y'all offensive linemen would do back in the day. But yeah, I like that. I mean, again, and this is another reason why I want to say when I give my pick, people might be like, "Oh my God, I can't believe you're going with that record." I legitimately think that this conference or this division is going to be very underrated. Very underrated because I mean, none of these teams are great, but I think the first 3 teams are really good. Now let's go to the last team who I do think is on a complete full rebuild, and that's Tennessee. Last year, 6-11. I don't think they get any better this year. I think Mason Rudolph probably ends the season as their starting quarterback.
And this is the team I kept telling you I liked all the moves they made in the offseason.
Yep, you do. And they're not bad moves. None of them are bad moves. They're just not – I just don't think it fits. I think the moves are fine if you're a team ready to be a Super Bowl team. But where Tennessee is, all those moves just feel like they're going to be wasted guys, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So, like, the big losses were Ryan Tannehill, Derrick Henry, Azeez Al-Shaair on the defensive side. But they brought in they're going to build this team around Will Levis, for better or for worse. So they got a good insurance policy at backup with Mason Rudolph from the Steelers. They got Cowboys running back Tony Pollard to form a 1-2 punch with Spears at running back. They got
Spears.
Yeah, I like Spears too. And they got Calvin Ridley from the Jaguars. He'll be a good complement with DeAndre Hopkins and Treylon Burks if he ever develops into that WR1. They also got Tyler Boyd to be a good third option at receiver. Lloyd Cushenberry from the Broncos, one of their best players on the entire team. He's going to be the new center for Titans. Sebastian Joseph Day from the Chargers at defensive tackle. Kenneth Murray from the Chargers at linebacker. The big one to me, or 2 big ones, were in the secondary. L'Jarius Sneed, one of the best one-on-one corners.
Yeah. And
then they got Chidobe Awuzie from the Bengals. So I like almost everything they did in the offseason. And they drafted Latham. And then Trevonde Sweat, so offensive lineman Latham, defensive lineman Sweat. Everything that all sounds great to me.
But they have no quarterback. They have no speed. They have no explosiveness. And then you built a team that if you look at them, boy, if they just had a bruising running back who could run. Oh, wait, we got rid of him. Hey, but we brought in, Tony Pollard. Oh, okay, that's great. You brought in Calvin Ridley. Oh, okay. Again, all those guys are great as 2 guys. But if you're asking them to be number ones, I think, and I'm not big on Will Levis. I don't think he's got it. I know he started the year off with 4 touchdowns in the first game, and then he threw 4 in the next 10 games. I just don't. And even if he does have it, you don't really have again, I just think their offense is going to be just terrible to watch. Now, maybe they can muck it up enough and, find that running game, or Levis or Rudolph will be able to get them, 20 points a game, but their defense is going to have to stop, everybody and keep them under 20. And even good defenses in this era, that's really hard to do.
Well, they got the secondary to do it. They also got Jamal Adams and Quandre Diggs back there as well. So I really think their defense is going to be back to their normal, great self. That front three with Joseph Day, Sweat, and Jeffrey Simmons is going to be just lethal.
Yeah, we'll see. All right, who do you have winning the division? Who else you have making the playoffs from the AFC South?
Just one team, and it's the Houston Texans. They'll be the number 2 seed in the AFC with a 12-5 record.
I have 2 teams making it from the AFC South. I have Houston winning the division, 9-8.
Okay.
I have Jacksonville making it as the 6th seed, also 9-8. Again, I think Indianapolis might be 9-8 and on the outside looking in. When I wasn't kidding when I said I think this is a very even, deep conference, and so what usually happens is you beat up on each other. And just look at the end of the year. Go through all the AFC teams and see how good, because I think they're going to absolutely dominate the NFC when it comes to AFC versus NFC this year. And you're going to see teams like Houston and Indy and them have like 90% of their wins against the NFC, and then against each other, they just all, and again, it's not a knock on any team. That's a compliment to the conference. All right, let's finish off our each division pick as we start to the AFC West. And as you texted me before we began, Kansas City 2-15. I'll disagree with you on that. I think they're going to be okay this year. But we will start off with Kansas City. Last year, only 11-6. Of course, they did win their 2nd Super Bowl in a row. And they also added almost MVP Carson Wentz. That'll completely change the season for them. Actually, he's a really good backup to have. And if somebody can rebuild him, it's Andy Reid. Because I fully believe, you hear all the reports like Carson Wentz, that year, of course, the year they won the Super Bowl, people don't remember he got hurt in week 12, week 13. Back then it was 16 weeks. And Nick Foles took over and all, but he was having an MVP. So he's the MVP if he doesn't get hurt. And apparently that kind of he kind of took that to head. Or maybe he was always like that. And apparently he was hard to work with, kind of like the Kenny Pickett rumors out of Pittsburgh. He just didn't listen. He thought, if anybody can break through, it'll be Andy Reid. Now, in saying that, Patrick Mahomes just doesn't really miss games, so I don't know if it'll matter. But, they've had kind of a quiet offseason for a Super Bowl champ.
Yeah, I mean, they really, the biggest thing they did was discipline Rashee Rice and sign Marquise Hollywood Brown.
I forgot about Rice already.
Well, they haven't really disciplined him yet, so we don't really know what's going to happen with him. But, Rice didn't have the best of off seasons, so. No,
and all that happened here in Dallas. Of course, Marquise Brown got hurt, dislocated his clavicle. That's got to hurt. Apparently, it's one of those injuries that he could be back in week 4, but it's like having a broken collarbone. It's really hard to completely heal from that in a year. You've got to, he might play again, but there's also a very high chance he will either be hampered or hurt. And let's not act like Marquise Brown is some, oh my God, wide receiver. He had a 1,000-yard year with Baltimore, decided he wanted out, went to Arizona, never really flourished there like people thought he would. He started off hot that year that they looked like they could be legitimate Super Bowl contenders. And then just like the rest of the Cardinals, he just kind of deflated. So I'm not really sure. To me, the bigger thing is Xavier Worthy.
The reason why I'm big on Hollywood Brown for this team for this season is because they needed some type of veteran leader in that wide receiver core. Because right now, like Justin Watson, Sky Moore, Kadarius Toney are not it.
You think Brown's a leader?
I think out of all of them, he's
the best chance.
He's the best chance. Like Xavier Worthy is going to be asked to be a star immediately instead of just learning and developing. Travis Kelce turns 35 this year. Pacheco is great, but you and me see him as another version of Marion Barber. May he rest in peace.
Oh,
So
man, I keep forgetting about that. I think Pacheco's going to be better than that. I mean, not that Barber was. I think Pacheco's running style is not quite as violent. And I also think, I just think the thing that helps Xavier Worthy and Marquise Brown is, you've got Patrick Mahomes. I don't know if you need another leader. Like he's that guy. And also you've still got Travis Kelce's leadership as far as that, again, you're right. He's 35, but I think for him, that just means you might not see him have 1,000 yards, but just like last year, wait till the playoffs and then you'll see Travis go. But no, I don't disagree with you. It's a young wide receiver group or wide receiver room. They lose, and not that these guys were great, but that you lose Hardeman, you lose Valdez Scantling, I could see that, but I don't think it matters with that offense.
And we'll see if the defense steps up like they did last year. They lost some players, Mike Edwards and Willie Gay, and L'Jarius Sneed. But they still have a pretty solid unit. Karlaftis had a good year. Jones, he's only 30, so he has another couple years of like really dominant Hall of Fame type numbers.
And they know how to use him. He's quiet for the first few weeks of the year. And then they just kind of let him, I remember Reed said with guys like that, you just kind of let them tell you when they want to take some, take a few snaps off, miss a series or two. And he's a guy that knows how to like use his motor. I always love when people say, that guy's motor's always on. Well, that's great unless he wears himself down. I'll take a veteran, even though he didn't do it in Dallas, but like a Michael Bennett. When he was at his best, he wasn't getting 18 sacks a year, but go look at the last 6 games of the season in the playoffs, and that's when he was flourishing. And I think Chris Jones is like that.
He could very well do that same thing this year. I still think it's going to be pretty hard for them to three-peat, but if any team can do it out of, the 74 Dolphins or the 76 or 1980 Steelers or – 90 49ers, 94 Cowboys, any one of those Patriot teams, Broncos 99. So if any of those teams can do it, I think the 2024 Chiefs can do it.
Hey, the Dallas Cowboys 2000, 2002, they've three-peated 5-11, 5-11, 5-11. Put a banner up. All right, let's move over to the Las Vegas Raiders. And this is a team that's kind of like Tennessee. Where, man, they've got a lot of pieces that look really nice until you look into the quarterback room. And then you look at the running backs. And then you look at the wide receivers. And I know Devontae Adams, but, he's just a waste at this point. And, by the way, I don't think he ends the season on the Raiders. This is a team that I think that they could easily win 7 or 8 games, but I think they don't need to. I think the best thing would be for them to win 4 games and truly rebuild.
Yeah, because like you said, you like some of their pieces. Like you and I both love their receivers, their tight ends, their defensive linemen, to an extent their linebackers, but they need secondary help. They need offensive line help.
Yeah,
they need running back help. They need quarterback help. So this is a team that can sneak around and get 4 or 5 wins.
They're going to get some wins again. Like, they seem to play the Chiefs hard. They play them well. This is going to be the type of team that you don't want to play when they've got only 5 wins, but you're needing to win to get into the playoffs. They're good enough and they're wily enough. And joking aside, they kind of do remind me of those 3 5-11 Cowboy teams who they were 5-11, but man, they would always snap up and bite somebody every year just out of nowhere. But yeah, look, it's tough if you're the Raiders. You're year 3 in Las Vegas. You don't want to completely tear down yet, but to me, I remember us talking about this last year. Once you let Derek Carr go, they should have tore down completely last year. You pull the Band-Aid off and get it done. They didn't. And now they're very much in danger of just becoming a 5-12 team for a few years.
But then they turn around and spend $100 million on Christian Wilkins to shore up their defensive line. Then they draft,
I was about to say, that's just the most Raider thing to do. Overpay for a really good guy if he's on a Super Bowl contending team. other than that, you're just getting a second team all pro guy for your 5-12. It's like Leroy Glover with the Cowboys. I keep going back to that era, but I mean, I thought about this earlier when I was looking at the roster, and I literally thought to myself, this is the 2001, 2002 Cowboys, where if things broke right, if you get a good Gardner Minshew, I could see them surprising people and winning 9 games. But in reality, that's not going to happen because Gardner Minshew is not stuck anywhere because at the end of the day, he's the new, what's his name? Ryan Fitzpatrick. He's going to be fun for 4 or 5 games. He's going to be explosive, good and bad. But at the end of the day, you can't win consistently like that. Sorry, Frank. One of our buddies, he's a huge, I'll be seeing him next week too. He's a huge Raider fan, but they're in that worst part. They're not good. They're not bad. They're right in the middle, which means you're going to be getting about the 15th draft pick every year. And it's really hard to build when you're right there.
And I would have a whole different opinion about this team if they kept Josh Jacobs. Because if they did,
thank you.
If they did, it may make more sense because they drafted the Oregon center, that Jackson Powers Johnson. I love that pick. He'll help improve that offensive line. They got Brock Bowers to help. A good pass catching tight end is a quarterback's best friend. And Minshew did well with the Colts, but he had 2 stud running backs. So he has Zamir White and he has Alexander Madison. So I'm not really sure what's going to happen here. I would almost just say they're going to start Aiden O'Connell and just get Carson Beck next year from Georgia.
So again, 5-12, 5-12, 5-12, because Carson Beck isn't going to tilt the world. By the way, my dad chimed in about the Chiefs. He said, don't forget they added Taylor Swift. Anyway, let's go to Denver, this is another team that if everything works right, they might shock the world. If everything doesn't, Sean Payton might be out of a job. I don't think he's out of a job. I don't think they shock the world, but I do think Broncos take a big step forward this year. I think the Broncos will be way better than what people think, especially if, in my opinion, they just hand the ball to Bo Nix and say, you're going to take some shots. You might look really bad, but by the end of the year, we're going to be way better than what people think. And he could very well, and I'm not saying he will, but he could very well pull a CJ Stroud. And if that were to happen, again, the Broncos talent-wise is not the worst. They've got some guys.
They do have some guys. We got 2 good running backs, Javonte Williams, Samaje Perine. They got Cortland Sutton, playmaking wide receiver. They drafted Bo Nix's BFF from Oregon, Troy Franklin at wide receiver. Marvin Mims was a great special teamer last year, and some Bronco fans would say he was probably their most exciting player last year.
Yeah, former Frisco Lone Star, Marvin Mims, OU player.
Tim Patrick's finally healthy. Little Jordan Humphreys there. Josh Reynolds they got in the offseason. Their offensive line got better when they got Ben Powers and Mike McGlinchey last season. Now, they lost Cushenberry to the Titans, but I still think this is a very top half of the league offensive line. And their defense, they lost Justin Simmons, but it's still pretty solid enough to make some plays.
This looks like a Sean Payton team. Last year didn't look like a Sean Payton team, and there's nothing you can do about that. Salary caps and all that, and you had to try it with Russell Wilson. You had signed him to the big deal and all. By the way, I love the fact that John Franklin Myers is still in the league. If people don't remember him, he was on the old Netflix show. I can't remember the name of it now.
Last Chance.
Yeah, Last Chance. He was a linebacker, if I remember correctly. I think he put on weight and ended up going down to the defensive line. But yeah, I just think it's cool that, he's still in the league and he's consistent. But yeah, it feels like this year Sean Payton has control of everything. I don't know if that means it's going to work. You're still going to have Mattingly, moments where Bo Nix is going to look like a rookie. I think Bo Nix is going to fit well because I think we've got to finally recognize that the college offense is now the pro offense. It's not like it used to be where, it's Mariota and it's a Oregon offense. That means he won't be able to adapt to this league. Now, this league is more of that spread, RPO, that kind of stuff than it used to be. Again, the issue for them, though, is I think injuries, if injuries start happening, they don't have a lot of depth. They're still having to deal with the Russell Wilson contract, at least for one more year. I don't like that they got rid of Jerry Jeudy. I know that, that's not a Sean Payton guy, but man, that dude, I think he's going to explode in Cleveland.
I think it will too. I just think he needed a different environment. As you were talking, I was just thinking about Bo Nix. And I don't think he would have even been drafted had he stayed at Auburn.
I agree 100%.
Now, I talked to you like when I first watched football was in 93, early to mid 90s, Auburn was a force. And I remember Patrick Nix was their quarterback, Bo Nix's father. It just made sense for him to go there and play his whole career there, but he didn't. For good reason.
I have a fun memory. We all have these memories that are in, just for whatever reason, they stick in your mind. And I can remember Auburn being, on probation, but undefeated. Yep. This was my first time through Dallas before I went back to college. So I was working security in this apartment complex, and they had a gate. And so I just sat at the gate, and all I did was wave people in. And I had a little TV in there, and I watched that classic game, Patrick Nix versus Jay Barker, Auburn versus Alabama. And it was, just a fun memory. But yeah, I agree with you. And it wasn't like Bo Nix was terrible at Auburn, but he was inconsistent. And Oregon, it showed that he could be that. And I think, I think this is a great test to find out, is Sean Payton the coach we think he was, or did Sean Payton just have everything break right with a Drew Brees and players like that? It'll be interesting to see. All right, let's go to our last team and our last team and all the picks. And of course, then we'll do our playoff, who wins and all that. Another team, I feel like I've said this 1,000 times, another team that could be the bell cow of the conference by the time it's over, or they could not be that good. I think they're going a little bit in between, but that is, of course, the LA Jim Harbaughs. So what are your thoughts on the Harbaughs?
I've went against him so many times that I just can't anymore. I just have to say, you know what? He's going to figure out a way to do it with this team. I like what they've done. They got the Baltimore running backs, Gus Edwards, J.K. Dobbins. They got rid of some of the older veterans because that's kind of something that you needed to do in order to just reset. I don't think they're resetting, though. That's the thing, because I didn't think Ladd McConkey is a number one wide receiver when I watched him in college. But he's playing like it right now in practice.
Yeah.
And couple that with Joshua Palmer, who's reliable, DJ Shark, who they got in the offseason. And then maybe Quentin Johnson figures it out by year 2. I still don't think he will, but new coach, new you, maybe.
Well, and I'll say this. We all think about Harbaugh and we think, grind it down, run. But you also, in his offense, you've got to have that speed guy that, again, I've said it a few times, takes the top off the defense. And I think Quinn can be that. I think if you're not asking him to be a 95 reception guy, if you're asking him to be a 70 reception guy, but you're the deep threat, I think he can flourish.
They're Willie Gault.
They're Willie. Wow. They're Ronaldo Nehemiah.
What?
You don't know who that is?
No.
So first off, he won Olympic gold in the hurdles.
Okay.
He was the first deep threat for the 81 San Francisco 49ers. Oh, okay. But anyway, Willie Gault, by the way, if you ever look at Willie Gault's numbers, tragically underrated. Honestly, I will admit this. I used to always knock the 85 Bears because I said their offense wasn't that great. Actually, they really were. I mean, for everything that, what they did. But anyway, I'm not as high on them as you are. I think the pieces are there. And I think Harbaugh will have success with the Chargers, but that'll be after they trade Justin Herbert for 2 first-rounders or possibly 3 first-rounders. Because Herbert's not his quarterback. I don't care what he says. I don't care what the media says. I've watched Jim Harbaugh long enough. Justin Herbert is not his guy, because Justin Herbert is a guy that needs to throw the ball 30 times a game. And Jim Harbaugh will not throw the ball 30. It's amazing to me the coach he is because he's a quarterback. You don't see quarterbacks usually revert and be like, no, I want to grind it out. I think the Chargers are going to take a lot of steps forward. But I still think at the end of the day, that I don't know, man. Who's their running back? Is it Dobbins? Is it Edwards? I mean, who is their guy?
It could be Gus Edwards. Could be Dobbins. It
Do you
could
also
be
trust
Isaiah
that-
Spiller? Maybe.
Hey, a name that people have forgotten about. Good one. And do you trust Harbaugh giving Harbaugh players? Like, maybe John's still pissed about that Super Bowl, or Jim's still pissed about that Super Bowl. And I don't know. I think the Chargers. I think Jim Harbaugh will win there. I think the Chargers will become at least a playoff team. I don't think it happens in year one.
He has the offensive line he wants for the most part.
He has a lot of the pieces. And I know it sounds crazy, but I'm telling y'all, this is not the quarterback he wants. And it's not a knock on Herbert at all. But he doesn't want flashy 4,500 quarterback. He wants a guy that's going to throw it for 3,000 yards, 20 touchdowns, and be happy about it.
Yeah, and that is definitely not Justin Herbert. But he has to talk him up as much as he can to up the trade value.
When does the conversation happen with Herbert about how good he really is? Because, again, beginning of the year, we get all the, these are the top 10 quarterbacks and all that. And Herbert is up there usually within the top 5. And again, I'm going to go back to referencing, you look at a quarterback like Dak Prescott and you just look at his numbers. Don't look at his playoffs. Just look at his numbers. And the dude was a runner-up for MVP last year. He consistently finishes in the top 6 or 7 of the stats. Yet everybody goes, yeah, but he doesn't win in the playoffs. He at least gets to the playoffs. Justin Herbert's made the playoffs one time. And to be fair, they collapsed. It wasn't really his fault. But he also didn't make any plays in that second half after they had jumped out of the big lead and Jacksonville starts clawing back in. That's when your franchise quarterback says, hey, I got this. Let's go out and let's go 10 plays, 90 yards. And even if we just get a field goal, when does that conversation start happening with him? Because I feel like for some weird reason, everybody always wants to blame the coaching. And Brandon Staley made that easy because, God, I don't know, man. There's just some people are just so obnoxious in their coaching, and he's one of them. But I think Justin Herbert deserves some of the why aren't you better at this point?
Who does he go to next? Like, let's assume that we have this year.
Dallas.
Oh, Dallas. Okay.
No, that's a good. Well, we don't know because
I'm trying to think of teams right now that really could use a quarterback.
Seattle. Geno Smith's not the long-term answer there.
And they didn't draft anyone.
No, they signed Geno to the 3-year deal last year, and and last year Geno had the season you and I said he would. He's going to be really good at times, and he's going to be really inconsistent at times.
How long does Matthew Stafford play?
It's funny. I never clicked on the article, but there literally was an article today that said Stafford says how long he'll play. I think if he stays upright and if he's having fun, I legitimately think he could play easy 3 to 4 more years. But if Sean McVay's like, hey, Justin Herbert's available, and also intern Noe the pro, Jim Harbaugh says, hey, Matthew Stafford's available. I give you my guy. You give me your guy in the first round. Matthew Stafford at this age isn't trying to throw for 4,500 yards.
And he ain't trying to move.
But you put him in a play action offense where you've got running. That's a good question. Pittsburgh? What if the Russell Wilson and Fields both just actually flame out?
That means Arthur Smith will be gone too.
San Francisco?
Ooh, it depends on what they want to do with Purdy. Yeah. I was actually thinking the Giants.
Giants? I just don't know. Again, though, if you put, that would actually be kind of apropos. You put him on the Giants with no talent, and then you expect him to do things. Giants are good. Now. I like Malik Neighbors. But again, I just think that people don't realize, and tip the hat to him for making the playoffs 2 years ago, but that was like the flukiest of flukies. And we'll talk about that when we do the NFC show. I have them finishing last. I don't have Brian DeBall making it past this year. I'm trying to think of other teams. I'm
thinking 2 in the NFC South. Saints and
Tampa Bay. I think Baker. That's a good one because even if Baker Mayfield is solid, he's never going to be spectacular. He'll never shed that. And I know A lot of people don't like him because of his personality. I didn't like him at OU, but that's just because I'm a UT fan. I've kind of come around on Baker Mayfield's attitude. I love a dude that can go out and go 5 for 15 and 3 interceptions, but then be like, I'm the dude that's going to lead y'all to the playoffs. I like that. I'll throw in a curveball for you.
I thought Dallas was the curveball.
No, Philadelphia Eagles.
Oh, wow.
What if Jalen Hurts and they struggle again this year offensively? The coach won't survive. I don't know if the quarterback will survive.
It'll be a whole overhaul. Then I don't know if it'd be attractive for Herbert to go there.
I mean, again, I don't think Herbert will have a say. I legitimately think he gets traded after this year. All right, so who do you have making the playoff? You know what? Let's just go ahead and do this. Let's go ahead and put up. Hang on, to make sure I don't hit anything. All right, let's go ahead and put up our whole playoff thing. Whoops, turned it off by mistake. All right, so I have making it out of the West.
Just
one
Kansas
team.
City.
Yeah, Kansas City. I have them being the top seed. Again, as you can see, I only have 3 teams in the AFC having 10 wins or more. But again, that's not because of lack of quality. It's the exact opposite. I think that's how deep this AFC team or AFC is. For you actually are really high on the Chargers. You have them winning the division.
Yeah, I feel that they're going to get those wins that they weren't getting the last few years under Staley, and I think they're going to surprise a lot of people and actually win the division. Their offensive line is really good. They're built to run the ball, and I think that keep away will allow their defense to be rested. And again, I really think that's going to be the recipe for their success this year.
Now, I want to go ahead and finish up before we get into the full playoffs. I have the Chiefs winning the division. I do have the Chargers finishing second, again, 9-8. I just think tiebreakers will hurt them. I have the Broncos finishing 8-9. I then have the Raiders. I just feel like they're just kind of stuck in that 5-12.
Yeah, and I really think the Chargers and Chiefs are going to just beat up on those teams and kind of pad their record a little bit.
And again, if Bo Nix isn't good enough or Sean Payton starts playing quarterback carousel, I could easily see Denver not tanking, but getting lower. I don't know. I've got to trust that it wasn't just all Drew Brees. Sean Payton had something to do with that. All right, so let's go to our playoffs now. This is, again, where you and I are completely different. Our seeding, I don't think we have one team that's seeded the same. You have Miami is the number 1, Houston is the number 2, Cincinnati is number 3, LA is number 4. That's your division winners. You have in the wild card Kansas City, Buffalo, and New York. I have Kansas City. So that's how different we are. And it's funny because I'll admit you're taking a leap of faith with the Chargers, but you're still having Kansas City being a perfectly good team.
Yeah. But I'm not too much of a gambler.
Yeah, I have Kansas City, I have Baltimore, Houston, Buffalo as the division winners, and I have Cincinnati, Jacksonville, and Cleveland. So that means in your wild card, even though I don't have them making the playoffs, I like the idea that the Jets win their wild card round if they make it. You have them beating Houston, and then you have Cincinnati beating Buffalo. Then you have Kansas City beating the Chargers. I like that because we see that all the time. The division winner and the wild card play each other, and the wild card wins. Especially if LA, if they were to sweep Kansas City in the regular season, I would put the house on Kansas City beating them in the playoffs. Yeah. Then in the division, you have Miami beating the Jets, Kansas City beating Seattle. That's the one thing you and I have the same. We both have Kansas City beating Seattle in the divisional round. And then in the conference championship, you have Miami beating Kansas City. I got to admit, dude, if Miami were to make the Super Bowl, that would be just monumental, shocking to me.
Yeah.
For me, I've got Baltimore beating Cleveland, Houston beating Jacksonville, Cincinnati beating Buffalo in the wild cards. In the divisional, I have Baltimore beating Houston, Kansas City beating Cincinnati. But where I differ, and I'm literally, honestly, going on, I think Baltimore is really good, even though you don't have them making the playoffs. I'm also going with the idea of it is so hard to win 3 Super Bowls in a row. How hard is it? It's never happened before. Something is going to happen to where Kansas City is not back in the Super Bowl.
Baltimore gets the revenge from last year in Kansas City.
Yep.
Nice.
Because, I mean, honestly, weather-wise, fandom wise, all that. I think I don't want to say home field's overrated because it's not. But home field's overrated in today's era because travel is nowhere near it is. These guys are on charter planes. Baltimore has been to Kansas City many times with this roster. They're not going into something they're not expecting. They're not going to be, oh my God, the crowd's too loud or anything like that. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe it's wishful thinking, but it kind of feels like if Lamar Jackson doesn't at least get to a Super Bowl this year, they're going to start the whole, okay, it might be time to move on. And how many chances does John Harbaugh get?
That's a good point. This will be year 17 with the same team, one Super Bowl appearance, multiple division titles, conference championship appearances, but yeah, just the one Super Bowl. So at some point, I mean, they have a really good team. They might just let them ride it out for the next 2 years, and if they don't get a Super Bowl, then blow it up.
All right, so nobody's going to remember. By the way, we appreciate that there's now 6,500 people watching.
Hey, nice.
Nobody's going to remember. Does your AFC team, do they win the Super Bowl? Or have you even thought that far?
I have, but I forgot.
I love it. I have Baltimore winning Super Bowl.
You have? Oh, okay. So you have John Harbaugh saving his job. Okay. I don't. I have Miami making the Super Bowl, but I have them losing too. We'll get to that in a couple of weeks.
Well, I'll go into again. Nobody will remember, and we're gonna keep talking here a little bit. Show's not over yet. I actually have a Super Bowl rematch. I have Baltimore beating San Francisco.
The revenge as well.
And I think the great thing is Super Bowl week's going to happen. They're going to have introductions, and running out with the Baltimore Ravens will be Jim Harbaugh as the special assistant. I don't think they allow that to happen, but that'd be fun if it did. What were your thoughts? Let's go ahead now. We are a Cowboy show. You and I both kind of watched at the Cowboy preseason game. I actually watched it this morning while I was editing and getting ready for this show. What were your thoughts on Trey Lance?
A lot of passes for not even getting 200 yards.
Yeah, against
third, fourth stringers,
and
I wasn't that impressed.
That's the biggest thing. This is a guy that was a top 10 pick. You wouldn't solidify him as a possible starter if he had a good game, but he should have a good game. And I was watching it, and he had a couple good scrambles. I think he had 36 yards on 3 carries. But, dude, that offensive line was giving him forever, and he would just not pull the trigger. And that supposedly was what San Francisco soured on him, was it's almost like – and it's weird because he's another guy that – in college, he flings it around and he's throwing it 100 times a game and he's throwing it down the field. And then he gets in the pros and he's trying to be too safe. And it just felt like so many times it was like, okay, throw, okay, freaking throw the ball, dude. Yeah. And then he would dump it down or he would throw it out of bounds. I didn't mind the move at the time. But, man, 2 years later, that 4th-round pick sure would have been nice because Dallas actually picks 4th-round picks pretty good. Yeah. And I don't know. I'm just going to go back to it. I am utterly confused with what the Dallas Cowboys are doing. And it's been a long time since I've said that. Like, sometimes I've thought they would be better and they haven't. Sometimes I thought they'd be worse than they haven't. But I've always felt I've been pretty good with reading their roster and knowing what they're trying to do. I legitimately just wonder now if like the things that Jerry Jones is saying about CeeDee Lamb and things like that, it's just there is something going on in that Dallas front office that is just weird.
Well, I agree with that. You also have to think about, he wasn't really throwing to anybody as well.
But he was also not having NFL corner. That's what I'm saying. A guy that's a top 10 pick should shine in that moment. Yeah. Like even if he's not having guys to throw to, he should have the arm skill of a top 10 where he's threading the needle. And that's my point. He's not even trying to thread the needle. Hey, that's great that you didn't throw any interceptions. I'd have rather you thrown 3 interceptions but added 100 yards and a touchdown to your resume, because at least then you're trying to show that you're an NFL quarterback.
So Stetson Bennett will stay with the Rams is what you're saying.
4 interceptions, but he gets the game winner. How about that?
Yeah. I really can't determine anything from these preseason games anymore, especially with the one less game. So I really don't have too much of an opinion right now of week one for the Cowboys. And I know they started a lot of their actual starters on defense, but I'm glad Overshown played.
Mozzie Smith looked pretty good.
Yeah, again, none of it matters until regular season starts for me. I think they already know who's, for the most part, going to be the starters.
Well, and that's the thing, again, I'm confused with a lot of the things Dallas is doing on the front office. But if they get Lamb in and he plays, all the jokes about all in and the not signing players and all that, ESPN ranked the rosters and had them at 6th. I think that's the thing people are forgetting about. This is still a really talented team, and it's actually a lot deeper than people realize. I mean, Tyler Guyton apparently is basically looking like Tyler Smith did last year and just settling right into that left tackle role. If Brandon Steele can get back to where he was 2 years ago, Brock Hoffman, the center, apparently, I mean, everything else outside of Lamb and the Dak Prescott thing, I think we would be having a happy offseason and thinking, hey, at least maybe this year Dallas breaks through. Now, in saying that, the most NFL thing in the world would be this is the year that Dallas actually breaks through with all these questions.
It really would be. And you and I would still be happy. We would shake our heads, but we would be happy. If Cooper Beebe doesn't end up being a starter, I'll be happy and confused because I remember him in college. He was a beast. And I'm thinking he's going to be walk-in starter, no questions asked. But he played guard. And right now we have Tyler Smith and Zach Martin. But he can also play center. So you think he's going to play center, but right now Brock Hoffman is listed as a starting center. Chuma Adoga is listed as a starting left tackle. But you're pretty sure that Tyler Guyton's going to play. No matter what, I'm glad we have at least 7 capable offensive linemen. Yeah,
because that's been the thing that's been an issue the last 3 years is the top 5 are great, but then after that, you'd start struggling, and it feels like they've got some depth there. I was thinking about this before we were recording. I think with Mike Zimmer, you're going to see less sacks, less turnovers, but better defense overall. I think that might make the game seem closer. But I think that I would trust and for people, I got a message on one of our posts that, we're just saying that because they struggled, Dan Quinn and everybody thought was great. You and I always were like, yeah, you're going to get some good things, but I don't trust the defense to win. And I do think that goes even past Dan Quinn, that's been a thing for the last 10 years. And I think maybe Zimmer can help that. I don't think you're going to see as many, as I say that technically they collapsed in the preseason game. By the way, did you see where Mike Zimmer didn't even use a play sheet? I love that. He doesn't care. He's just trying to scheme and get his guys playing just basic defense, meaning protect your gaps, go chase the ball. I think Zimmer as a defensive coordinator and not having to worry about personnel as a head coach, I think you'll see this defense become a little bit more clutch. I think Micah Parsons will have less sacks, but be a better overall defensive player this year.
That would only increase his value, and hopefully it'll turn into a big contract for him with the Cowboys.
Well, he's quitting for 1 year after 2027. You saw that, right?
Mm-mm.
He's already told the Olympic Committee he wants to be on the flag football team to win a gold medal.
So we're trading him is what you're saying.
I mean, I would take a year off to win a gold medal.
I mean, that's cool, but
I think you and I should maybe try out for that flag football gold medal.
We would be terrible.
That's not the point. Hey, there's a break dancer in Australia that's proved you wrong, sir. I want to be mean like that. Speaking of the Olympics, we had the Monday night show about a month ago now. Mm-hmm. I think legitimately this Olympics might have saved the Olympics. Like you and I, even that whole show we had where we talked about the Olympics, our whole point is like nobody thinks of the Olympics anymore. That's something even you kind of in the 90s, it was big, but not quite as big as the 80s. And a lot of that was simply more channels and more options to watch stuff. But, even the controversy helped. I think the Paris Olympics will go down as one of the best Olympics in this century.
And, just the stuff outside of the actual competition helped too. Like with Snoop,
Yes.
Snoop was the unofficial mascot for the U.S. and I want to get one of those pins where. Have you seen those pins where he's smoking and it's the Olympic? Yeah, it's pretty cool.
He's blowing the smoke rings, and it's the Olympic rings. And by the way, they've already named him as the ambassador for the LA Olympics. Tom Cruise did a really cool stunt and closed out the ceremony. I actually was going to talk to you about this. I want OutDrank The Coverage to be in LA in 2028 to watch some Olympic stuff. I was so. We even talked about it on that Olympic happy hour. I have not focused on the Olympics in 20 years. Legitimately, I think like 96, the Atlanta 96 was probably the last one that I was just all in.
Yeah.
And every day of this Olympic, I got more in. And then you have like the basketball finals, two of the best finals in the history of basketball Olympics. United States beating France, two just amazing games. You feel for France because you can make the case on both of them that they outplayed the U.S. on both games, especially the women. Steph Curry, maybe just in pure basketball terms, no matter the level, one of the most clutch performances ever in the history of basketball with what he did. And by the way, LeBron James still deserved the MVP. He played better through the whole Olympics. Steph Curry, in the qualifying and stuff, he wasn't great, but the last two games, especially against France, those last 6 minutes, holy crap. Seriously, the last time I've seen anything like that when I think of is Michael Jordan against Utah.
Steph Curry has done this before, but he was much younger.
Yeah.
And Golden State was in their prime. So seeing him do it here at this stage at the biggest level, it just proves that even at 36 years old, if he needs to flip that switch for at least one game, he can do it.
Yep. And just think, when you look at the women, you got Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese. You got to feel that in 4 years that they'll be there. I don't know. It was nice in an era where the world is so cynical. And, we joke about it when we're messaging each other every day, and just everything just seems like it's just more bad news after more bad news. It felt like the Olympics, even with the controversy, it felt like the Olympics again. You had the controversy. You have what's her name losing her bronze medal. I mean, it sucks, but that's kind of what makes the Olympics the Olympics. Great performances, bullshit rulings, trophies stolen, people pissing fire because they're on every anabolic steroid known to man. And I don't know. It felt like the Olympics might have restored themselves. And I thought it feels like it happened at the perfect time because LA is going to do it right. Because that's when we talked about it, 84 Olympics is my favorite Olympics of all time.
It's definitely going to be excess.
Oh yeah. I mean, again, especially if you and I are there.
Oh, let's try to make that happen.
Hey, like you told me earlier, let's go to Olympic Village, give everybody STDs, and let's see what happens. Any other sports news you want to talk before we wrap it up?
Oh man, I've been so focused on this preview, I can't think of anything else. Really nothing. I mean, baseball's baseball; they'll still be there.
Good point. I like that.
What about you?
Yeah, I mean, Rangers are done. I don't care. I still don't care. Everybody's trying to, again, I'm on all these pages because of promoting the shows and all, but I don't care. They won a World Series last year. But in saying that, Seattle, Houston's getting fun because I still think whoever wins that will be way more deadly in the playoffs than people understand.
Yeah.
And you look at Seattle, man, those trades have started to pay off. They were a sinking ship 2 weeks ago. Now they're at least staying above water. So that'll be interesting. The AL East is fun. Hey, the Mets are still around. That's fun.
And part of it's because the Braves are not trying to make any kind of separation.
Yeah, that's a good point. Philadelphia is solid. All three of those teams are really good in the NL East. It's fun because just like last year, and I know the AL East is record-wise is great, but I don't feel like there's anybody they're the prohibitive favorite. If they don't win, I'll be shocked. There's not one team that I feel that way with the teams that are still in playoff contention.
Yeah, AL for sure. NL, I don't know. You almost have to assume the Dodgers should be that team, but they have had so many playoff disappointments, so you just expect them to fail, even that they got the best players in baseball right now. I wouldn't be shocked. I wouldn't be shocked if it was Milwaukee versus Cleveland for the World Series.
Oh, that would be fun. I don't even know what either one of those teams are doing. Well, I know that Cleveland's still doing good. Anyway, that's going to wrap up our AFC preview. If you want to email us, odtcshow@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook. Just go to OutDrank The Coverage. Of course, on YouTube at L4 Media Company. We won't be here next week. We will be back in 2 weeks. That'll be our NFC preview. And then we'll have, the season's what?
Next week?
Yeah, 4 weeks away, 3 weeks away.
Mm-hmm.
3 weeks away.
Got fantasy football coming up too.
We got fantasy football. By the way, want to remind everybody we have a YouTube. We have a YouTube. Of course, we have a YouTube. You're listening to it. We have a Patreon channel. All you got to do is hit that code right there. Go to our Patreon. We will have a special couple of OutDrank The Coverage shows that are only on the Patreon, including our fantasy football show. I've got the name for it. It's called Noe Knows Fantasy Football. So you'll be able to check that out where Noe and I'll just talk our fantasy football picks. Also have fun inside our league, talk about how our leagues are doing. Speaking of, I showed you the other night, I've started my annual rewatch of the league, season 1. You can find our retrospective of the first 4 seasons on our YouTube page. I just wanted to tell you, man, it still holds up. Like I was so thinking like this will be the time when I watch it and it starts to grow old. Nope. I'm laughing at episode 1, season 1 jokes, just like it's the first time I heard it. Dare I say that show has become tragically underrated because I think a lot of people have forgotten about it.
Started 15 years ago. Some of the best one-liners in all of television. Last episode had Larry David in 2015. I mean, it got a lot of attention in its prime.
But nobody's really talking about it now. And part of that's also because what's his name with the 9/11. And then, outside of Duplass, nobody else. Well, Nick Kroll, he's consistently up there and he had the Kroll show for a few years. But nobody else has really done anything big anymore.
What they need to do is do a show with us because we still have 3 seasons to cover.
Trying to get Paul Scheer on to do that, man. I'm chasing him. And by the way, go check out his YouTube channel. I don't know the name of it. Him and Sex Addict Rob, they do a lot of shows on YouTube together. And I'll look and I watch them and I laugh. And they'll have like 300 views. We have more people than he does. I mean, that just tells you, we have more people than he does. But anyway, I think that's it, buddy.
It was fun, man.
It was very fun. To Jacob Green of the Seattle Seahawks, we appreciate you for not being on the show, but we toasted you. To you, intern Noe the Pro, I appreciate you joining us. Until next time, this is Grandeur Pest Solutions, OutDrank The Coverage, right here on